A single father drowning in medical debt stumbles into the wrong hospital room and saves a woman taking her last breaths. He thought she was a forgotten Jane Doe. He didn't know she was the ruthless CEO of a billion-dollar empire, and that saving her just made him a target. The fluorescent lights of Seattle General Hospital buzzed with a low, agonizing hum that Liam Davies knew all too well. It was 2:14 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. For the past 6 months, this sterile, bleach-scented hallway had been his second home. His 6-year-old daughter, Chloe, was asleep 2 floors above her tiny chest, rising and falling to the rhythm of a ventilator. She needed a pediatric heart transplant, and Liam, a high school history teacher running on fumes, and black coffee needed a miracle. He was currently $80,000 short of the hospital's mandated deposit to keep Chloe on the active transplant list. Exhaustion was a heavy blanket over his shoulders. Liam had spent the last 3 hours arguing with a graveyard shift financial counselor on the 2nd floor, begging for an extension. Denied. He stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for the 5th floor, the pediatric ICU. But his hands were shaking, his vision blurred from sleep deprivation, and when the doors chimed and parted, he stepped out, not realizing the elevator had stalled on the 4th floor, the VIP recovery wing. The 4th floor was eerily quiet. Unlike the chaotic pediatrics ward, this corridor was lined with thick oak doors, plush carpeting, and dimmed, warm lighting. Liam dragged his feet down the hall, counting the doors. Room 514, he told himself. Just get to 514. He pushed open the heavy door to room 414. The room was plunged in darkness, save for the sickly green glow of the street lamps filtering through the blinds. Liam immediately sensed something was wrong. There was no rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. There was no child's bed. Instead, a sprawling, king-sized hospital bed sat in the center of the room. And from that bed came a terrible, wet, rattling gasp. Liam's heart slammed against his ribs. His eyes adjusted to the gloom. A woman was thrashing weakly against the tangled white sheets. She looked to be in her early 30s, her face pale as parchment. Dark hair plastered to her forehead with cold sweat. Her hands were gripping her throat as she desperately tried to pull in oxygen. Liam rushed to her side. Hey, hold on. I'm getting help." He reached for the nurse call button, but the wire had been cleanly snipped. Panic flared in Liam's chest. He looked at the IV pole beside her bed. Instead of a clear, saline drip, a thick, milky substance was pumping rapidly through the plastic tubing, directly into her vein. Someone had tampered with the line. She wasn't just dying, she was being murdered. Okay, I've got you," Liam muttered, his old EMT training from his college days kicking in. Without hesitating, he grabbed the IV port attached to her forearm and ripped the needle out, tossing the tainted line to the floor. The woman's back arched, her eyes snapping open. They were a striking, piercing hazel, clouded with pain, but burning with an intense, terrifying clarity. She lunged forward, her cold fingers wrapping around Liam's wrist with a grip like a steel vice. "Don't!" She choked out, blood trickling from the corner of her lips. "Don't let—" "Richard, I'm not letting anyone do anything. Stay with me," Liam ordered. He grabbed a heavy metal water pitcher from the bedside table and hurled it through the glass pane of the room's observation window. The shattering crash echoed like a gunshot through the silent VIP floor. Almost immediately, the sound of heavy boots pounded down the hallway. But the woman didn't let go of Liam. With her remaining strength, she shoved her hand into the front pocket of Liam's flannel shirt, pushing something heavy and metallic deep into the fabric. She locked eyes with him one last time, a silent plea hanging in the air before her eyes rolled back, and she went entirely limp. Code Blue Room 414. A voice roared from the hallway. Suddenly, 3 men in dark scrubs burst into the room. They didn't look like doctors. They were too broad, moving with military precision. One of them roughly grabbed Liam by the shoulders and shoved him hard against the wall. "Who the hell are you?" the man barked, reaching for something at his waist. "I walked into the wrong room," Liam shouted, raising his hands. "Someone cut her call wire. She's not breathing." Before the man could do anything else, a genuine crash team of nurses and a frantic doctor rushed in through the broken window frame, alarms blaring. In the chaos of the defibrillator charging and the nurses shouting out vitals, Liam was pushed out into the hallway. He stood there for a moment, chest-heaving, listening to the shock of the paddles. Clear, a security guard grabbed Liam's arm, escorting him away. "You need to leave this floor, sir. Now!" Liam stumbled back to the elevator, his mind reeling. It wasn't until he was sitting in the cafeteria at dawn, staring at a cold cup of coffee, that he remembered the woman's final action. He reached into his chest pocket. His fingers brushed against cold metal. He pulled it out. It was a massive, solid gold signet ring. Engraved on the flat surface was a roaring griffin standing over a compass encircled by the Latin words Imperium et Constantia. Who was she, and who was trying to kill her? By Friday, Liam's world was collapsing. Chloe's condition had deteriorated. Dr. Albert Pendleton, the head of cardiology, had pulled Liam into a sterile conference room to deliver the fatal blow. If Liam couldn't produce the $80,000 by Monday morning, Chloe would be moved from the urgent transplant list to pending, effectively a death sentence for a 6-year-old with a failing ventricle. Desperation made Liam reckless. Over the past 3 days, he had tried to find out what happened to the woman in room 414. He thought maybe she had family who could help him a reward for saving her life, anything. But when he asked the front desk about the VIP patient, the receptionist looked at him blankly. "Room 414 has been under renovation for 2 months, Mr. Davies," she had said, pulling up the hospital's digital floor plan. It showed the entire east wing of the 4th floor as closed off. "There are no patients there." They had scrubbed her from the system. Sitting in the dim light of his cramped apartment, Liam stared at the gold signet ring resting on his battered kitchen table. He had spent hours at the local library researching the crest. It hadn't taken long to find. The griffin and compass was the corporate logo and family crest of Hayes Global Logistics, a $40 billion shipping conglomerate that controlled half the freight moving through the Pacific Rim. A quick internet search of the CEO yielded hundreds of results. Genevieve Hayes, 34, tech shipping prodigy. The photos showed a formidable woman in tailored suits with sharp cheekbones and piercing hazel eyes. It was the woman from room 414, but the most recent headline, published just hours after Liam had been in that room, made his blood run cold. Genevieve Hayes steps back from public eye due to mild exhaustion. Board member Richard Hayes assumes temporary control. "Richard, don't let Richard," she had whispered. Liam realized with a sickening drop in his stomach that he hadn't just interrupted a murder. He had stumbled into a billion-dollar corporate coup. Her own family was trying to execute her, and they were covering it up with the hospital's complicity. A knock at the door startled him. Liam quietly slid the gold ring into his pocket and walked to the door, peering through the peephole. Standing in the dingy hallway of his apartment complex was a man in a pristine, charcoal-grey bespoke suit. He didn't look like a cop. He looked like an expensive problem. Liam cautiously opened the door, leaving the chain engaged. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Davies," the man said. His voice was smooth, devoid of any discernible accent. "My name is Caldwell. May I step inside? I have a solution to your daughter's medical predicament." Liam's grip on the door tightened. "How do you know about my daughter?" Caldwell smiled thinly, and slipped a long, crisp white envelope through the crack in the door. My employers are aware that you had a confusing night on Tuesday. Wandering onto the wrong floor, experiencing hallucinations due to your extreme stress. We understand. In fact, we sympathize. Inside this envelope is a cashier's check for $200,000. Liam froze. $200,000. It was enough to secure Chloe's surgery, pay off his debts, and move them out of this roach-infested building. It was salvation. All you have to do, Caldwell continued softly, is deposit the check, pay the good doctors at Seattle General, and completely forget your little hallucination on the 4th floor. Focus on your daughter, Mr. Davies. She needs her father, not a hero. Liam looked down at the envelope. His hands trembled. If he took the money, he was accepting hush money from murderers. If he took it, he was condemning Genevieve Hayes to whatever slow death they were currently arranging for her. But if he refused, Chloe would die. What kind of father are you? His conscience screamed. Liam grabbed the envelope. Caldwell's smile widened into a smirk. A wise choice, Mr. Davies. Wait, Liam said. He pulled a pen from his pocket, flipped the envelope over, and wrote 3 words on the back. I know everything. He shoved the envelope back through the crack into Caldwell's chest. Take your blood money. If anything happens to that woman, I'm going to the FBI, the SEC, and the New York Times. I left a digital dead man switch with everything I saw. You touch my daughter, or me, it goes live. It was a total bluff. Liam didn't know how to code a dead man's switch, but he saw the color drain from Caldwell's face. You are making a catastrophic mistake, Caldwell hissed, the polite veneer vanishing completely. Liam slammed the door and locked the deadbolt. He leaned against the wood, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He had just declared war on a $40 billion corporation. He had to get to Chloe. He had to get her out of that hospital tonight. Liam threw a few clothes into a duffel bag, grabbed his keys, and bolted out the fire escape, unwilling to risk the front door. He ran the 6 blocks to the hospital through the pouring rain. When he reached the pediatric ward, he bypassed the nurse's station and slipped into room 514. The bed was empty. The ventilator was turned off. Chloe, Liam gasped, dropping his bag. Chloe, Mr. Davies. Liam spun around. Standing in the doorway was a massive man in a dark suit, an earpiece curled around his ear. Before Liam could scream for security, the man raised his hands in a placating gesture. Please lower your voice. Your daughter is safe. She was moved 20 minutes ago. Moved where? Who the hell are you? Liam demanded, grabbing a metal IV stand to use as a weapon. She's with my employer, the man said calmly. She asked me to bring you to her. Please come with me. Time is of the essence. Caldwell's men are already downstairs looking for you. Liam had no choice. He followed the giant of a man down a restricted service elevator, bypassing the lobby entirely and emerging into the underground parking garage. A sleek, bulletproof black Maybach was idling in the shadows surrounded by 3 heavily armed guards. The rear passenger window rolled down an inch. Liam cautiously approached. Inside, illuminated by the faint glow of a laptop screen, was Genevieve Hayes. She looked terrible. An oxygen cannula was looped over her ears, and a fresh IV was taped to her hand, but she was sitting upright. The raw, dying woman from room 414 was gone. In her place sat a CEO, radiating terrifying authority. "Get in, Liam," Genevieve said, her voice raspy but commanding. "We have a hospital to buy, a brother to destroy, and a little girl to save." The interior of the Maybach was a fortress of leather and privacy glass, speeding through the rain-slicked streets of Seattle. Liam sat frozen, his adrenaline-soaked brain struggling to process the sight of Genevieve Hayes. Up close, The damage her family had inflicted was terrifying. Her skin was translucent, the dark circles under her eyes bruised and heavy, but the sheer force of her will seemed to be keeping her upright. "My daughter," Liam managed to say, his voice cracking. "Where is she?" "She is currently at the Rainier Alpine Clinic," Genevieve replied, her voice a strained rasp. "It's a private, highly secure cardiac facility, funded by my personal trust. Dr. Aris Thorne, my personal physician, is evaluating her now. She is safe, Liam. Safer than she was at Seattle General." Liam let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 3 days, leaning his head back against the leather seat. "How did you find me? How did you even know who I was?" Genevieve gestured weakly to a tablet resting on her lap. "When you broke that window and triggered the code blue, you gave me a 30-minute window of chaos. My personal security detail, the men Richard hadn't managed to buy off, finally got to me. They smuggled me out through the laundry tunnels while Richard's mercenaries were busy locking down the VIP floor. We pulled the security footage from the hallway. We saw your face. And when my men hacked Seattle General's database, we saw why you were there." She shifted, wincing as the movement pulled at her IV line. "Richard was poisoning me, Liam. A slow, methodical drip of a synthetic neurotoxin mixed with a paralytic. It mimics the symptoms of a rapid-onset autoimmune disease. He paid off Dr. Pendleton, yes, your daughter's cardiologist, to isolate me on the 4th floor and ensure I peacefully slipped into a coma." Liam felt a surge of nausea. Pendleton, the man who had looked him in the eye and told him Chloe would die without an $80,000 deposit, was the same man acting as a billionaire's executioner. Why? Why would your own brother do this? "Because tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Hayes Global is voting on a merger with Horizon Freight." Genevieve explained, her hazel eyes flashing with cold fury. "It's a hostile takeover disguised as a partnership. Richard stands to make $3 billion in kickbacks if he delivers my company. I blocked the merger, so he decided to remove the roadblock." The car turned onto a private, gated driveway, thick pine trees shielding a sprawling modernist estate from the main road. "I need your help, Liam," Genevieve said quietly as the car slowed. Liam looked at her bewildered. "My help? You have a private army. You're a billionaire. I'm a high school history teacher who can barely afford groceries." "I have money, yes, but my inner circle at the company is completely compromised," she said, her gaze locking onto his. "I don't know who's loyal to me and who is on Richard's payroll. Furthermore, I am legally incapacitated. Richard invoked a medical proxy 3 days ago. If I walk into that boardroom tomorrow, he will have me detained by private security and shipped off to a psychiatric care facility before I can even speak." She reached out her cool, pale fingers, resting over his hand. "But you have the ring." Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out the heavy gold signet. "What does this actually do?" "In the corporate bylaws drafted by my grandfather, the bearer of the founder's signet speaks with the absolute authority of the CEO," Genevieve said. "It was a fail-safe designed for wartime logistics to allow a trusted proxy to make executive decisions if the CEO was unreachable. Tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into the Hayes Global boardroom. You are going to use that ring to freeze the merger." "They'll never let me in," Liam argued, though he was already gripping the ring tighter. "They won't have a choice," Genevieve countered, a dangerous smile touching her lips. "Because you won't just be my proxy. By the time the sun comes up, you are going to be my legal husband." Liam choked on his own saliva. "Excuse me. A proxy can be challenged in court. A spouse, holding the founder's signet, wielding medical and financial power of attorney, cannot—" she stated pragmatically. My lawyers are inside drawing up the paperwork. It's temporary, a marriage of absolute convenience. But it is the only way to blindside Richard. Before Liam could protest, his phone buzzed. It was an automated alert from the National Transplant Registry. His heart leaped into his throat as he read the notification. Status update match found. Patient Chloe Davies. Status pending hospital confirmation. A heart, Liam gasped, tears instantly springing to his eyes. They found a heart for Chloe. Genevieve's expression darkened. She tapped her earpiece, listening to a secure channel. Liam, the donor heart is arriving at Seattle General at 7 a.m. tomorrow. But Dr. Pendleton just logged into the system. He's rejecting the organ on Chloe's behalf, claiming unpaid surgical fees. He's routing the heart to his secondary patient. Rage, hot and blinding, erupted in Liam's chest. Pendleton was using Chloe's life as collateral damage in his corrupt alliance with Richard. We stop him, Liam said, his voice dropping to a deadly resolute register. He looked at the billionaire CEO. I will sign your papers. I will walk into that boardroom. I will tear your brother's empire to the ground. But you have to get that heart for my daughter. Genevieve nodded slowly. We have a deal, Mr. Davies. Let's go to war. The boardroom of Hayes Global Logistics occupied the entire 60th floor of the Seattle skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the storm clouds rolling over Puget Sound. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension and the smell of expensive cologne. At the head of the massive mahogany table sat Richard Hayes. He was a handsome man, but his features were sharpened by greed. To his right stood Caldwell the fixer, looking as immaculate and deadly as he had in Liam's hallway. 12 board members sat in silence, reviewing the merger documents that would effectively dismantle the company. If there are no further objections, Richard said smoothly, clicking his gold pen, I will sign the authorization as acting CEO, citing my sister's tragic, ongoing medical decline. The heavy double oak doors of the boardroom suddenly blew open. 2 of Richard's security guards stumbled backward into the room, followed immediately by Liam. He was wearing a sharply tailored navy suit, courtesy of Genevieve's estate, and his jaw was set like granite. He didn't look like a terrified father anymore. He looked like a man who had nothing left to lose. The acting CEO will not be signing anything today, Liam announced, his voice echoing off the glass walls. Richard frowned, exchanging a quick, panicked glance with Caldwell. Who the hell are you, security? Remove this man. My name is Liam Davies, he said, ignoring the guard stepping toward him. He walked straight up to the table and slammed his fist down. When he pulled his hand away, the heavy gold founder's signet gleamed under the recessed lighting. And I am the legal proxy, the designated power of attorney, and the husband of Genevieve Hayes. Gasps rippled around the table. The board members stared at the ring, recognizing the legendary family crest instantly. This is a farce, Richard spat, standing up. My sister is comatose. She's incapable of marrying anyone. This man is an imposter. Caldwell, get him out of here. Touch him and you'll be arrested for assault. A woman's voice rang out. The room froze. Standing in the doorway was Genevieve Hayes. She wasn't the dying woman from the hospital bed. She was dressed in a striking, immaculate white pantsuit. Though she leaned heavily on a silver-tipped cane, her posture was impeccable, and her hazel eyes burned with a terrifying, absolute authority. 2 armed men in tactical gear flanked her federal marshals. Richard's face drained of all color. The pen slipped from his hand, clattering against the mahogany. Genevieve. You were dead. Genevieve finished for him, limping slowly into the room. Liam stepped forward, offering his arm. She took it, the physical touch anchoring them both as she faced her brother. You miscalculated, Richard. You bought my doctor. You bought my security, but you couldn't buy the man who walked into the wrong room." She tossed a thick manila folder onto the center of the table. It slid to a stop right in front of the board chairman. Inside that folder are the offshore bank transfers from Richard to Dr. Albert Pendleton at Seattle General. Genevieve addressed the paralyzed board members. "You will also find the toxicology reports detailing the thallium Richard had pumped into my veins over the last 6 months." Caldwell made a sudden movement toward his jacket pocket, but the federal marshals instantly drew their weapons. "Hands on your head, Caldwell," one of them barked. Richard fell back into his leather chair, trembling. "Genevieve, please, it was just business. The company was stagnating." "You tried to murder me for a payout," she interrupted, her voice like cracking ice. "And worse, you let your hired doctor use a dying 6-year-old girl as leverage to cover your tracks. You are finished, Richard." As the marshals moved in to handcuff Richard and Caldwell, Liam's phone vibrated violently in his pocket. He pulled it out, his hands shaking. It was a video call from the Rainier Alpine Clinic. He answered it. On the screen was Dr. Aris Thorne standing in scrub greens. Behind him, through the glass of an operating theatre, Liam could see a surgical team at work. "Mr. Davies," Dr. Thorne said, a weary but triumphant smile on his face. "We intercepted the transport via federal injunction 20 minutes ago. Pendleton is in FBI custody. The heart is here, and it's a perfect match. Chloe is in surgery now. She's going to make it." Liam dropped to his knees right there in the boardroom. The crushing weight of the last 6 months, the terror, the exhaustion finally broke him. He buried his face in his hands, openly weeping. He felt a hand gently rest on his shoulder. He looked up to see Genevieve. The hardened CEO mask had melted away, leaving a soft, profoundly empathetic woman. She knelt down painfully beside him, her white suit pooling on the floor, and wrapped her arms around him. "She's safe," Genevieve whispered, resting her forehead against his. "We did it, Liam. She's safe." 6 months later. The autumn sun cast a golden glow over the private gardens of the Hayes estate. Liam stood on the patio, holding 2 mugs of steaming coffee. He watched as his daughter Chloe ran across the manicured lawn chasing a golden retriever puppy. Her cheeks were flushed with healthy, vibrant color. She had a long scar down her chest, a badge of survival, but her laughter was the strongest sound Liam had ever heard. "She's not supposed to be sprinting yet," a voice murmured from behind him. Liam turned and smiled. Genevieve stepped out onto the patio. She looked entirely transformed. The poison had been completely flushed from her system, and the vitality had returned to her sharp, striking features. She took the mug from Liam, her fingers brushing warmly against his. "She's got a brand new engine." Liam chuckled, wrapping his arm naturally around Genevieve's waist. "She wants to test out the horsepower." When the dust had settled on Richard's arrest and the boardroom coup, Genevieve and Liam had quietly agreed to annul the marriage of convenience. But as the weeks passed, as Liam stayed at the estate, while Chloe recovered, the annulment papers sat unsigned on Genevieve's desk. The trauma they had survived together had forged an unbreakable bond. The woman who commanded billions and the history teacher who commanded a classroom had found something they both desperately needed, a true partner. Genevieve leaned her head against Liam's shoulder, watching Chloe tackle the puppy into a pile of autumn leaves. "You know," Genevieve said softly, taking a sip of her coffee, "the board is still hounding me about who my permanent proxy is going to be." Liam looked down at her, a teasing glint in his eye. "I think you need someone who knows how to navigate a crisis, someone who isn't afraid to break a few windows." Genevieve smiled, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out the heavy gold founder's signet. She didn't hand it to him this time. Instead, she took his hand gently, sliding the ring onto his finger before lacing her fingers through his. "I think I found him," she whispered, and as the billionaire and the single father watched their little girl laugh in the sun, Liam knew that sometimes taking the wrong turn was the only way to find exactly where you were meant to be. Did this dramatic romance story leave you breathless? If you loved the twists, the suspense, and the heartwarming ending between Liam and Genevieve, smash that like button. Share this video with a friend who loves a good billionaire rescue story, and don't forget to subscribe for more intense, real-life drama stories every single week. See you in the next one.